weird ways, right, to things, because that's how we retrieve memory. So this transfer of information like this is like dumping a whole bunch of new stars. We've got all these new stars, these new, like in a star field, all this new information, but it's not connected to the old information in our brain yet. There's no connections yet. It's just, we got the new information, okay? So now, when you have REM sleep, you have to connect it. So now we got this new, now I know about the femur. I just, in medical school, I learned about the femur. Learned about the humerus, right? And those are bones. And what do I think about bones? Well, I think of the skeleton I had as a little kid, you know, hanging on the door at Halloween, right? So basically, that's what's happening in REM. You are organizing the new information that just got transferred. You're connecting it to your network, right? Okay, so that's why you have to dump the information first. So you can turn the camera down. You dump the information into your neocortex, then you make the connections. So that's what's saying, strengthening neocortical memory representations. That's all it's doing. It's making the connections between the nodes, okay? All right,
So
so
these random data points that you pointed out, and
Yep.
you're trying to correlate, the brain's trying to correlate that.
it's trying to organize it with previous information that you've learned in your whole life. Where does it put each of those, and how does it connect it, right? So that way you can retrieve it. You can retrieve it in all the unique ways we retrieve things.
Kind
Yes?
of like a RAM computer.
Yeah, yeah.
It's doing that at the same time you're dreaming and having rapid eye movements.
That's
and
what the
you're
dreaming
living
is for, in essence. It's like we don't understand exactly why we dream, but that's what's going on. You are organizing your new memories with your old ones. You're making connections, okay? But you don't make the connections till after you dump it over in there. So that's the dumping over part. Okay, so now we understand the importance of these two types of sleep. Okay, so let's keep going, because we got a lot more to cover. Okay, so our sleep changes as we age. So that ideal cyclic 5 cycles with deep and then REM and all that, it changes as we get older. And so there's a lot of reasons why it changes, like the amount of REM sleep and the amount of deep sleep, they change. And they get a little bit more erratic, okay? And so one of the reasons why is because our melatonin production changes as we get older. So like here we are at, 10 to 12 and 20 years old, and then it just has this huge decline. And melatonin is the opposite of like serotonin, and it's what tells us, it's one of the things that helps us go to sleep at night, this hormone that we produce. And so if we have less of it, it's going to affect that cyclic nature of what's going on. Also, our human growth hormone, HGH, it also changes as we age, and that dramatically affects how we sleep as well. So let me show you the next slide. Okay, so this is a graph that represents how our sleep changes as we get older. So non-REM sleep are all the stages, so it's like N2 and 3 and 4, and then there's REM, right? So everything and then REM. As you can see, REM gets lower. They don't really distinguish deep sleep uniquely here, but all the other forms of sleep gets lower, and there's a lot more awake time, right? So that definitely is not ideal. Okay, so here's an example of what a night might look like in a young person versus an elderly person. And it's pretty dramatic, right? The cycles aren't as clearly defined. If you look here, how much is in the stage 4? So here we've got a long stage 4 and a shorter stage 4, just like we know happens, right? And then, but how much is in stage 4 here? Like none, okay? So that's not good, and that's going to affect your memory and your cognitive health for the long term, because you don't get that pressure washer cleaning out the amyloid plaques, and you don't get the memory consolidation, right? Okay, so this is a problem. So we have got to figure out how to get into stage 4. We got to get in. We got to do it, okay? So if you want your brain to work, and I'll tell you what, my brain worked a lot better in medical school when I figured this out and I started promoting it, right? And working, because sleep is my issue. When I get nervous and uptight, I don't sleep, right? And so that was affecting my ability to perform in medical school. And I'm no dummy either, but I'm like, why can't I recall stuff that I learned 2 weeks ago that I had down pat, and then I can't, and it's because I wasn't getting enough deep sleep. Okay, so here's another picture. Once again, this is what you would expect to see. A younger person, you'd hit stage 4 twice at least. Then here you don't get much at all. Now, it depends on who you are, how much you get. You might barely dip into it, right? But just briefly.
Well, this is due to aging. How about the external factors on the melatonin production?
So many things affect our sleep. I'm going to explain, like it's not just aging. Some older people actually do okay. Like I might get worse sleep than someone else. There's so many things that contribute to whether or not you fall into deep sleep and how long you get. So we want to affect that. Once we know what contributes to deep sleep, we can optimize it. We can
Is there any correlation, this is probably silly, is there any correlation between light sleeping, where you can wake up if you hear a fly in the room, and deep sleeping, just when you shut your eyes and the band you come through and you wouldn't know it? Is there any correlation between that and actual deep sleep versus the lighter?
So if you take a nap during the day, some people can go right into deep sleep.
Okay.
Right? And that's great, because, anytime you can go into deep sleep, even if it's a nap, you're gonna get all the health benefits from it. Now, it might make it harder for you to sleep at night. That's something you have to figure out. We are all unique. Some people do great with naps, and some people don't, right?
Okay.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, according to my watch, I get like 4 hours of deep sleep a night.
Yeah, that's probably
my
not
wife-
correct.
My wife gets, using the same watch, she gets about 20 or 30 minutes.
Right, because I have an engineering background, I don't believe anything. I will see the data, show me the numbers, right? And I'm like, so I use a ring, and we're gonna talk about it to test my own, but I'm like, that's not on my brain. How can this be, measuring my brain, right? Like, that's not right? So I, used these, right? And I actually measured my brain waves while I slept and compared it to my finger, right? To see how correct, and so it's interesting, but we're gonna go into that in a little while, so let me keep going, okay? All right, because we got a lot of slides. All right, so this is what my sleep looks like, right? And I just picked some random ones. So like this one was March 3rd, so not too long ago, right? And if you look, I woke up at 4 a.m., the white is awake, right? And I stayed awake till 6 a.m. That sucked. But like sleep is my issue, it's my problem, right? So, and if you look, but I want you to notice something about all of these for me. See this dark blue on the bottom? This one stopped at midnight, right? This one I stopped at around 3 a.m. This one, I got a little bit of smattering later, which is unusual. Normal, and like look at this one. All my deep sleep happened before midnight again, right? So the point I'm making is, for me, if I'm going to bed at a time I know is optimal for me, I will get almost all my deep sleep before 1 a.m. But that's not for everyone. You might go to 2 or 2:30, But remember, a healthy sleep cycle, you're gonna get it early in the night. And it's based on circadian rhythms. So light, and I'm gonna just describe that. So let's say, I've said this at previous lectures, let's say you say to yourself, I get 8 hours of sleep every night, or 7 hours, I'm great, but I like to go to bed at midnight, right? And then I just sleep until 7, right? Well, you're cheating yourself with your deep sleep, because the sun goes down at a certain time each day, and it doesn't matter, it doesn't care, the sun doesn't care when you go to sleep, but your brain does, and it will affect your deep sleep, and you will not get your deep sleep if you go to bed too late, right? So you'll have to learn to force yourself, if you can, train your body to go to bed earlier, so that way you can get more deep sleep. Because you will find, if you go to bed later, you won't get that deep sleep, you'll miss it.
Are you gonna talk about naps?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so, anyway, this is mine, and I'm pretty sporadic, like if you look all the white on the top, right, I wake up a lot. Yes?
Question, on the last one you woke up at 4, and we're up until 6, and then went back down. Here, it doesn't look like you really got a lot of good sleep after you went back at 6.
I didn't.
If you were awake at 4, should you just got up?
I could have, yeah.
Organized your books?
I could have, but I'm stubborn. I lay there and meditate and think about how bad my sleep is.
Okay.
Because that's just what I do, right? And, my mom's told me, get up and clean your closet or something. Your closet really needs to be cleaned. I'm like, okay, Mom, God.
Yeah.
Anyway, but usually I just lay there and think about what I'm gonna do. But I could cut, yes, because it's not very helpful at that point.
So you're not really getting a
Yeah.
lot of things.
And, you know, I did get a little bit of REM though. Do you see this light blue right here? That's REM. So, and REM's useful, right? That makes the nodal connections, which helps with retrieval, right? So in my mind, my goal is a minimum of 1 hour of deep sleep total a night, and then I'm happy. I'm like, okay, if I can do that as a, you know, I'm turning 50 this year, as a 50-year-old, great. Like 1 hour's really good, okay? Younger people should be going for an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes of deep sleep, but like 50s and higher, if you can get an hour, great. So
Well,
here,
then
51 minutes. Here, an hour and 19. So if you added up all this dark, I got an hour and 19 of deep. That's fantastic for me. Here I got an hour and 4. That would be good. That'd be like a good, I can live that. And then here, an hour and 34. So this was a great night for me. But as you look, I start waking up early. This is me just laying in bed at like, you know, whatever time it is. I'm just not good at sleeping. Okay, so this is why it's good to track your sleep and figure out what you do. Because you can also think yourself, well, I know why I woke up at 3:30 a.m. It's because I had 2 glasses of wine later in the evening. And they've proven that if you drink wine late or alcohol later in the evening, you almost always will have an awakening around 3 a.m., right? 3 to 3:30 a.m. is because that's when your liver does a detox cycle. That's a whole another lecture. So, and I've tracked it on my phone and on my ring, and that's what, sure enough, that's what happens to me. I'll wake up, you know, yes.
What effect does regular exercise has in invoking deep sleep?
It doesn't necessarily, from the studies, seem to indicate that it increases the duration or the frequency of the deep sleep, but it does help with sleep latency, which means it helps you go to sleep easier and it helps you stay asleep. So all those frequent white awakenings, like you'll have less awakenings, right? You'll sleep sounder, right? You'll go through your cycles better, right? So, so exercise is great. It's definitely something you should do. It will help with your sleep, just not necessarily, it won't increase your deep sleep, right? Okay, except in however, a smoother night might contribute to your deep sleep, you know? Okay,
But
so
you do not, can you still sleep, like exercise late at night, or you shouldn't?
you know, the science is out on this one, because I'm a big exerciser, I love it, so like, you know, I'll do push-ups, you know, when I'm studying medical school or whatever, and, you know, should I do that or not? Should I do jumping jacks, you know? And the reality is it's unique for everyone. So some studies will say you gotta stop exercising because of where our peak of our circadian rhythms are. Don't exercise after 6 p.m. But you know what? I have not found that to be true for me. So everyone's different. And I could exercise hard at 9 p.m. and it won't affect my sleep at all, you know, meaning it's not going to negatively affect it. So you got to figure out what works for you. So on that, you know, that point. Okay, so this is just an article. I had used the analogy that deep sleep is like pressure washing for your brain. I didn't make that word up. That's what the scientists, how they describe it. So it's like the deep clean cycle here. They got the pressure washer and it scrubs all the amyloid plaques out. And so you can find a lot of research on this if you look it up. Okay, let's go on. So why? Like what's actually happening? Well, the thinking right now is that when you have deep sleep, you have this really low frequency that creates like this resonant hum in your brain, and that creates your lymphatic system in your brain. So this is the subarachnoid space of your skull, and basically you get this increased flow of cerebrospinal fluid through the astrocytes that pull and push all this waste material into your vein to be pushed out. So it has to do with an expansion, like a vasodilation, and then an increased flow that happens because of the resonance of the frequency. So that's just the mechanics of why it works. Okay, so here, adenosine. So there's ways we regulate our sleep-wake cycle. And so most of us have heard of when we create energy to help us do all the things we do, you know, it's ATP. So most of you have heard of ATP, right? And that's adenosine triphosphate. That's the fuel that we use to fuel every cell in our body. We need ATP. And so adenosine triphosphate, the adenosine part, right? As you use energy, it turns into adenosine diphosphate, and then we have to turn it back into adenosine triphosphate. So we do this recycling. And so there's all this conversion going on from adenosine to adenosine, diphosphate and then triphosphate, so there's all this conversion. Well, adenosine starts building up in our brain as we're awake, because as we're awake, my brain right now, my muscles are using ATP. And so we get a buildup of adenosine in our brain as we're awake. And that buildup is inhibitory. And it starts to, when it builds up to a certain level, we want to go to sleep, okay? Which is why you can't stay up, for very long before you feel like you're really tired and you gotta go to bed. So you can't do too many all-nighters, in a row without feeling like you're gonna die, right? Well, that's the adenosine. It's called sleep pressure. And the sleep pressure is created by a buildup of adenosine in our brains. So that combined with the light cycles we have a super chiasmatic nucleus that right where our optic nerves cross from each of our eyes, right above it is the super chiasmatic nucleus, and it detects and takes little tastes of the light coming in our eye, and it will also set our sleep-wake cycle, and it stimulates the melatonin production or suppresses it, right? So that combined with adenosine sleep pressure controls when we feel the urge to go to sleep and when we feel the urge to wake up. And you can stimulate this yourself to help get you regulated if you're not in a good cycle. So we're going to start getting into the tools here soon. All right, so why do we even care about sleep? So I've just gone into depth on what we're trying to do, sleep, why it's important. Well, my main thing, as many of you have heard, is heart health. So if we don't get enough sleep, it causes a systemic inflammation because your body gets stressed in essence. And so when you have a constant chronic stress, in this case lack of sleep, your whole body becomes inflamed. So your C-reactive protein will go up, and all these biomarkers you can measure in your blood will go up for inflammation. And the systemic inflammation that's a result of lack of sleep, and sleep apnea might be lack of oxygen as well, then your arteries and your veins, your vasculature, will start becoming inflamed, and then the walls are like Velcro and they become sticky. And so then when you have extra calcium in your blood and maybe a dysregulated lipid profile, then things will start sticking to your artery walls and you'll start getting hardening and narrowing of the arteries because of this chronic lack of sleep. So sleep is extremely associated with heart disease and in an increased risk of heart attacks. So here, and it's also associated with weight loss, and I'm going to show some graphs which are actually astonishing. And it also affects your blood sugar regulation. So if you're diabetic, you can really help your blood sugar if you get proper sleep. And then obviously cognitive decline, memory, lipid metabolism, and then increased longevity. So there's studies to back all these up on why sleep is important for us. Okay, so we're going to start with heart health. So there's a link between heart disease and your sleep. People with insomnia have 45% greater risk of dying from cardiovascular disease than those with good quality sleep. That's huge, 45%. So if you're trying to pick a high yield item to help your heart, as I've told you before in my last lecture, it's oral hygiene and it's sleep. Those are the two things you need to focus on. Those are the most important two things to focus on to reduce your risk of a coronary event. Okay, so today we're doing the sleep. Oral hygiene was last time. Okay, so it also affects your blood pressure, so you can read if you want to look up these studies. It also, it says right here, people who are forced to reduce their sleep by 1 hour or less, so 1 hour or less, they just reduce their sleep, like for daylight savings time, it says that the hospitals show that the seemingly trivial 1 hour reduction has a frightening spike in heart attacks, 24% increase in heart attacks the following day from daylight savings. Right? That's crazy. I mean, sleep is way more important than we think. When you look at huge populations, you can get all kinds of great information. So that's good. All right, so here it's also at 45 years old, people who sleep fewer than 6 hours are 200% more likely to have a heart attack or stroke. Right? That's crazy. Okay, so that's how important sleep is. We got to figure this out. This is something